Okay, this is a map of the Highland Park and the Brunswick Eruv taken off of the website. And basically, just the basic boundaries of the Eruv are, over here we have the train tracks. It goes along the train tracks. And then up Plainfield Avenue, all the way up Plainfield to Jefferson, and then up to Woodbridge Avenue and turns down Fox Road, down Donaldson. It goes to the park. Now around the park, it includes the park and the Eruv, but there's also there's a cutoff. There's a separate Eruv cutting the park out in case the park is down, which it often has issues, as we'll see. It's rarely down, but just in case, we have the backup Eruv that cuts the park out of the Eruv and goes up behind Adelaide, back to the train tracks. And then it goes across the bridge to New Brunswick and includes a good portion of New Brunswick. Now, there is a myth about crossing the bridge. You can only walk on one side of the bridge. I don't know in Hilchas Eruvin if that makes any sense, that you have one open area that you could go on you could carry on one side and not on the other side. We know if it's parts of Malkum Asr, there's a rule that you can't, everything becomes Asr. So it's impossible that you have one Rishus that you're able to carry on one side of the Rishus, not on the other side. Anyways, the mechitzas of the Eruv there are the walls of the bridge. So you can walk on the entire bridge. It could be once upon a time there was an issue, but now you can walk across the bridge into the Brunswick. Okay, now before we discuss the construction of the Eruv, I want to show you a big nafkamina that having the Eruv connection to New Brunswick made in terms of Hilchas Tchumen. If we know Tchum Shabbos is once you leave the city, and the city is determined by being 70 amos without houses. If there's 70 amos without houses, then the city ends, and then you have 2,000 amos from there. So if one would be coming from New Brunswick, starting in Highland Park, right over here, starting Highland Park, the edge of Highland Park, crossing into New Brunswick, assuming you go 2,000 amos, assuming 2,000 amos is 3,000 feet, the shir of Avram Chaim Noah, so you would only be able to get not too far, not even to Rabbi Johnson Hospital. And the Tchum is over. Okay. According to the Chazon Ish, the shear of 2,000 amos is like 4,000 feet. So you can get a little further. If you go from the edge of Highland Park, you could get yourself to Rabbi Johnson Hospital. They'll be right around there, a little bit past the hospital, no way to St. Peter's. The bridge already starts at 70 amos. There's already no houses at the edge of Highland Park, 70 amos. You start 2,000 amos. So you can't make it very far. You get Rabbi Johnson, but to take the Chazon Ish Lakula, that would be a big chiddush to take that large shear to get you so far. So you'd really have to be choshish for a smaller shear. So you wouldn't be able to get that far. That is going from Highland Park. Going from New Brunswick, from the last house in New Brunswick, you have 70 amos, and then 2,000 amos. That would get you to a little bit past North 2nd. So you couldn't really make it to most of the shuls. Abbas Achim would be in there, but none of the other shuls.
What is 70 amos then?
70 amos is not very far. It's around 120 feet.
It's not, the bridge is not 70 amos.
Way more. The bridge itself looks like it's around 1,000 feet. So you wouldn't be able to get that far. And if you take the Chazon Ish, you could get a little further. You could get 4,000 feet. That would be around to 4th, South 4th, North 4th. But you wouldn't be able to get to the rest of town. So that would be an issue for people who they're shoyvis in the hospital and they'd be walking into Highland Park. They couldn't get very far. But now that there is a possible solution to this problem, and that is there's a concept of ribua. The Gemara discusses ribua ha'ir, that you can square off the city, that whenever you count the tchum, you make a box around the city and count the tchum from the edge of the box, not the edge of the actual physical city, but the imaginary box. And so that ribua would be, if you go all the way up River Road to right before the train tracks, you'll take the last house over there on River Road, and you could go down and make a box, square off Highland Park, and it touches into New Brunswick. And that'll be the square that the tchum of Highland Park starts from there. That's considered the city limits. That's the city limits of Highland Park as far as tchum is concerned. I'm sorry? The river, we could ignore.
No one lives in that left-hand vertical line.
No one lives there, but the uppermost house, there is a house up there on River Road that
Excuse
someone
me.
lives.
If
So then you
people in the
square it
room,
off with the last house in the south, that's right by Donaldson Park, and you can make a box. So that's the edge of Highland Park. Now there's a question in the Chazon Ish. When you make this box, is that only regarding starting where you start your tchum, where you start counting the 2,000 amas from? And that's the relevance of the box. Or we say that's the actual city. We say the city became larger, and therefore when it overlaps with another city, that joins the two cities together. So this is the suffix of the Chazon Ish. When you have the Ribua Ha'ir, is it just the point of starting the 2,000 amas, or does it actually make that the city, the boundaries of the city itself extends to the Ribua, and therefore when it touches another city, it connects the two cities. It's as if it's one big city now, and then you have both cities are considered your city. If that would be the case, then since it does touch into this Ribua of Highland Park, touches into New Brunswick, it would connect the two cities, and it's now one big city. There's no issue of tchumen. It's something in the Chazon Ish. 13 years ago, we sent the Shiloh to Rabbi Yashiv. This specific Shiloh, through David Goldberg, brought it to Rabbi Yashiv, and Rabbi Yashiv said you could be saimich if it's tzarich mitzvah. If you go to a minyan, then one would be able to be saimich on this ribua to connect the two cities. That was before the New Brunswick Eruv was revamped. But now that we have the Eruv, connecting it now, the Highland Park and New Brunswick through the Eruv, it becomes one big city. The Eruv, the wall, so to speak, around both cities makes it into one big city, and therefore the tchum of Highland Park does not start at the edge of Highland Park. It will start much later on, not only at the edge of New Brunswick, as you see, even after the end of the Eruv of New Brunswick, it continues, the houses continue all the way into Somerset, and therefore the tchum of Highland Park doesn't even start until after Somerset. I don't know how far it goes. So one can walk, actually, the Moyle he had a bris milah on a Shabbos or Yom Tiv up in some hotel in Somerset, and he was able to walk all the way there. It's like a 2.5 hour walk, but he's able to walk because the tchum connects to New Brunswick, and then from there, the city doesn't end because there's never a break of 70 amas from the houses. This is the map of the different sections of the Eruv. It marks off every single lechi, and the different colors are the different sections for the checkers. So we have the 11 different sections, and every lechi is marked off separately. I don't have an exact count of how many lechis there are, how many tzeres pesachs. It's somewhere in the 200, a little more than 200 range. And here's a closer up. Every single lechi is marked off. So if there's an issue, especially in the park where there's no numbers on, it's just it's basically just on the trees. So you have this map, and the checkers are able to just call it by the lechi number based on the map, and they could report back that way how where something happened. Okay, now to the construction of the Eruv. Basically, the basic Eruv is using tzuras HaPesach, which is 2 lechis, 2 side posts, and a kaira on top of it. It could be made of any material. The lechis and the kaira could be any material, as long as it's not nitelas b'ruach, as long as it could stand through the wind. And typically we use a U-guard. It's a piece of plastic molding. It's electrical molding, and it just looks like it fits right into the electric poles. The electric company themselves, the utility companies themselves use these poles themselves. So it's not very noticeable to someone that is from the Eruv, as opposed to being...
We buy it from the same company that sells it to the electric company.
Yeah, here's a closer up of it. We put some white tape on top just to make it easier for the checker to see the top of the pole, and it goes under the wires. Either it'll go under the electric wire or the cable, the guy wire, that's holding it. And that's so we have the lechi, and the electric cable will be the kaira.
There's telephone cable there.
I'm sorry, yeah, we don't use electric cables. These are all communication lines down on the bottom of the poles. When we get to the park, there are no utility poles, so we use trees. We'll take that same U-guard. Generally, we'll take that U-guard, taking that molding, and we'll put a steel cable into the tree on top of it, and there we have our Tzuras HaPesach on the trees. No, so generally we fasten tree. These are plastic. I'm sorry. He's asking why we fasten to the tree as opposed to the lechi, and the reason is that these poles are plastic and they really can't hold the pressure of the wire. To the guy wire? Sure, we can do that too. Yeah, we do it. Often we do it because those are more permanent. Fasten it to the guy wire. Yeah. But here we'll fasten it to the tree, since the tree can support the wire, as opposed to this plastic. The plastic molding is not strong enough to hold the wire. Recently, when we've been having problems in the park, so when we've been replacing it, our Eruv repairman has been putting these painted poles, metal poles that are painted brown, so they're not as noticeable. And then the wire is connected, since the metal poles, the wire is connected to a cap on top of the pole, and not into the tree, which solves some problems, as we'll see later on, that the wire being attached to the tree, and as opposed to the lechi, sometimes creates issues. In New Brunswick, that the Eruv is a little newer, they started using these electrical conduit, that the electric companies are starting to switch over from the plastic, from the U-guard, the black U-guard, to conduit pipes. So he put it up with, he built it with the plastic conduit, these white round conduit pipes, either half an inch or an inch. It does curve sometimes. This actually curves out a little bit. It has to curve in order to, the wire is a little bit farther away from the pole, and it had to curve out to. He wants to know it curved. It curves a little bit at the top, and so it curves out to meet the wire. And if is that okay? And the answer is, if it goes all the way up to the wire and it's touching to the wire, then it's okay. The Chazon Ish says that's all right. Even according to everyone, when it touches the wire, that's definitely okay, even if it curves from the bottom. That the bottom of the pole is not under the wire, it's just the top of the pole that's under the wire. Now, we use along the train tracks, for all, I think it's close to 2 miles of train track, we use these metal poles that are holding the electricity for the trains. Up on top of them, there's a wire that's going on top, and that's our Tzuras HaPesach. We have the lechi here, 2 lechis, and the wire going above it is our Tzuras HaPesach. So that's easy. We didn't have to do anything for that, and it never ever breaks. I think they rented something from Amtrak. They do pay something to Amtrak.
We have contracts with Amtrak. We've got contracts with Amtrak. You can't touch those poles. You can't, even on the regular poles, the utility poles, you have to have a contract right of third-party attachment, it's called. If you go over to any of those electric, telephone poles and put up a sign, there's a shear tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, that's a federal offense.
Okay. All right. Sometimes we don't have to put anything on the poles, since there's a wire on top, either the lightning wire or ridge line, it's called, that goes right over the top of the poles. And therefore we have the pole itself serves as the lechi, and there's a wire going over the top. Here's a close-up. You have the wire going over the top, and therefore we have it Tzuras HaPesach right there without having any attachment. Usually, we'll see later on, there could be issues with that.
Doesn't the horizontal have to be a tefach wide?
Nope, it doesn't have to be anything. It could be a mashu. It could be any thickness. That's where you can use wires. As long as the wind doesn't blow it down, it's okay. Here we have in the corner of Raritan and River Road, we use the telephone post. So if you see the wire going across over here, There's a wire going across the street. They're going across Raritan Avenue. It goes on top of the telephone pole. I'm sorry, of the light, the street light. And we use that for lechi. So you can use all different types of things for lechis as long as the pole goes up and there's something attached that's going across.
So you use it, it doesn't have to,
Different types.
also you just generate it. You just designate it.
Yeah, we have to designate. If it's already there from beforehand that we didn't put it there specifically, it has to be designated to be used as an Eruv. Right? So we have to have, we decided we're going to use that as a Tzuras HaPesach. That makes it into Tzuras HaPesach. Yeah, otherwise we'll have to build it ourselves. But we can take an existing lines that are already there and decide that that's a Tzuras HaPesach for our Eruv. This is in the boat dock in Boyd Park, right? It's on the 18 in New Brunswick. We use these light poles as the Eruv. There's a line on top. It's a little hard to see the wire, but right here there's a wire that's going across these light poles, and that connects. That's we're using those as the lechis. Now there was a few years ago. I guess things around 2 or 3 years ago, we were having an issue that every single week, this wire was coming down. Every week we show up on a Thursday or Friday, and it's down again. We didn't know what was causing it, and we had to and it's very hard to get up. These are very thin poles. You can't use a ladder, so we had to get a bucket truck every week to fix it. And it went on for 5-6 weeks, and then one week we showed up, and no pole. Instead of the wire coming down, the pole came down. We had tightened the wire so strong that when whatever was knocking down the wire, took down the pole instead. So that solved that problem. Here's the base of the pole. And so then we just rerouted it to a different pole. It wasn't crossing the road anymore. And we haven't had a problem since. It could be a truck. It could be there was construction going on. We don't know exactly. We never really solved it.
Who strings the wire?
Who strings it? Who strings the wire? Our steel cables? Our cables, we do it. Either I'll do it if it's not so high, or have Shalomur do it. Or if it's a more difficult thing, we'll have, there's Eruv repairmen who do it. We have this ADK Electric that does it. There's a Rabbi Shafkin from Passaic who's a professional Eruv repairman who puts up as well. Sometimes we could use a tree itself as a lechi. So here we have the wire going on top of the tree. We used to have, we used to have molding down, we used to have molding going down the side of the tree. We had some issues with it. It's a dead tree, so it becomes loose. It doesn't really hold tight. So we just put the wire on top, shave down the top of the tree to make it flat. And then the tree itself could serve as a lechi.
When you mentioned before that you have to do designations, so
Yes.
you have to have reshus for all these things. I mean, they're public trees and public places and public holes. You have to have reshus to do that.
We actually do have rishus, but I don't think it's necessary to have rishus. If we just it's there, we're not doing anything. We're just deciding it should be our doorway. That it should be our wall there's no reason why you need rishus for that. We're not doing anything with it.
You're saying because it's publicly owned?
Because we're not doing anything. We're just deciding that it's a doorway. Right?
But
Let's say you have utility poles with a wire on top.
Right.
And we just have to decide we're using that as a Tzuras HaPesach, even though they didn't intend for it to be a Tzuras HaPesach. But we decided that this is a Tzuras HaPesach, so now it's a Tzuras HaPesach. There's nothing to ask reshus for if we're not doing anything with it, right? If we want to put poles on, their utility poles, we're going to have to ask permission to use it in order to hold our poles.
Okay,
If
Mr.
you decide
Atkin,
that
the
something
lawyer-
is a Tzuras HaPesach, you don't have to ask permission.
Excuse me a second.
Yes.
I mentioned before, we have contracts with the,
With the Amtrak, you mentioned, the Amtrak.
we have contracts with Amtrak, we have utilities, we have contracts with the Middlesex County Parks Department.
Okay, so that's what I'm asking. Yes, and I'm
Yeah,
have
we
asking.
do have
contracts,
permission. I
we
was just
have
saying that even without
proclamation.
that specific issue of just deciding that something is a Tzuras HaPesach, that I don't think would require any specific permission. All right, sometimes we
No,
have
permission
Thank you.
going to use the park for our Eruv, to string
right,
wires.
we definitely have permission to do whatever we're doing. Yes, that's not
We
a
have
question.
contracts for all this. You can't do this without contracts because you're in trouble.
So, okay, well, you're talking in trouble legally. I'm talking about halachically, you would need to have the permission.
Right. Sometimes we'll put 2 lechis on one pole, and that's because if the wire bends, it takes a little curve, so we're going to need a lechi on each side of the curve. We'll need a lechi on each side of the curve, so we need 2, one going up this way and one going the other way. Another reason we would have two lechis on one pole, and that would be if it has to, for some reason, it has to switch the wire. We have it going on one wire, and then it doesn't work. That wire, you see, it turns off or it can't continue. So then we're going to switch wires. We'll switch the higher wire that continues on to the next pole. So we're going to have 2 lechis on each pole. Now here we have. This is just a setup for this type of Tzuris HaPesach that we made out of this situation. Over here, this is in the Water Authority in New Brunswick. It's on George Street, right where it comes off of Route 18 along the Raritan River. So we use this fence. This fence is part of the Eruv. Now, first of all, there's a little issue with this fence because the fence, if you notice how high it is off the ground, so that is more than love off the ground. It's mechitza tluya. We can't use the fence, the gate part of the fence, because it's tluya, it's not within lova to the ground, and therefore we have to use a concept called oymen meruba al aparetz, that we have to use the oymen meruba between this side and this side. It closes off this opening, and that is what we're using for this fence to be a mechitza. No, it's not. No, it's 15. It's around 15 feet. Anyways, there are these poles over here. You see these poles coming down. So that would break it up further. They do open, yeah. So when they come and open it, but it doesn't open all the way. If you notice that the fence is a little bit off of the poles on the side, so it really just makes it smaller than 10 amos. So that's all right. I'm sorry.
It's as if the gate wasn't there at all.
Right, we can just ignore the gate, and we have the oymen meruba al parts. It's basically the sides are slightly bigger than the opening, and we're okay with that. They can open the gate, but it doesn't make a difference because we have oymen meruba al parts anyways. We have the side of the gate could even if this gate's not here, we basically could ignore that gate because the gate is anyways too high. It's too high off the ground. It's a mechitza tluya. So we're just using the oymen meruba al parts on the side of the gate. Now, there was an issue that someone crashed into the gate and took it down. So we no longer had oymen meruba al parts. So that was a problem, how to deal with it. And basically the solution he came up with was to make the caution tape into Tzuris HaPesach. So we have that caution tape across going to the poles on either side. And now we had our Tzuris HaPesach closing that off until they fixed the fence. The curry could be mashu as long as it's no. That's the curry. No, there's a curry in front of a mavui. That's a different curry. The curry of a Tzuris HaPesach could be a mashu as long as it's not nitelas beruach. We did it very tight, and it doesn't. It flutters in the wind. It flutters in the wind, but it didn't blow. It for sure didn't blow down. It didn't blow out. It just fluttered a little bit. So that was fine.
What's the shear that it's acceptable?
It's the shear of moving out of line acceptable. There's a question about that, whether it's even a little bit out of the line or up to 3 tvachim. So we'll paskin ikad in 3 tvachim, but we try. You know, a lot of lines will blow a little bit. You know, if you have a lot of slack and it's not so tight, the line can blow. But we have up to 3 tvachim for it to blow like that. Here we have under the train tracks. This is on Sutton Road. Now we showed before the train tracks. All along the train tracks is a Tzuris HaPesach. Those big tall beams going along the train tracks. That's Tzuris HaPesach. But there's an issue going under the train tracks. There's a tunnel. There's an underpass going under, and that would be a pirza. That's open, and the Tzuris HaPesach works for above, and that stops at the train tracks. But below the train tracks is open, so we had to put a Tzuris HaPesach over there. And what we did for the Tzuris HaPesach, we put these poles, metal poles, and going up to the roof of the going up to the roof of the underpass. The Mishnah Berurah in Hilchos Sukkah says you can use a roof as long as the poles go all the way up. You can use a roof for the kaira al gabav. If the lechi goes all the way up to the roof, you can use that. The Chazon Ish disagrees, but he says that you need something to make a difference, to show that there's a difference from the rest of the roof. Because it's not nicker that's the Tzuras HaPesach. It's just a roof. Then it's not nicker that this is the Tzuras HaPesach. So we put it bedafka, we're on an edge, not under the main underpass. You just add a little ledge to make the Chazon Ish happy as well. That it'll be nicker. It's a little small ledge. It's around 1.5 feet or 2 feet. So that should be fine according to everyone. With just one side, because we just need on one side of the underpass, because that is the Tzuras HaPesach. Going across the top, it's just the roof. This is the roof of the underpass. It's a little ledge along the roof. Yeah. No, when you have the street drives through, he's asking why every street should be a pirzah. But it's driving through the Tzuras HaPesach. As long as it's not a Rishus HaRabim D'Oraisa, so the Tzuras HaPesach is a doorway, and that is your mechitza. The problem over here is that the mechitza itself stops at the train tracks, because that's the floor of the Tzuras HaPesach. So now underneath that, you don't have a Tzuras HaPesach. The pole doesn't go all the way down here, and the street stops that Tzuras HaPesach. So your Pesach is only when you're walking along the train tracks, you have a Pesach. But beneath the train tracks, there is no Pesach at all, and this is considered a pirzah, and we had to close it off with the Tzuras HaPesach. No, the problem is that the Tzuras HaPesach, it's not because the pole doesn't go all the way down, that the pole doesn't have to go all the way down. Well, but the problem is that the Tzuras, since there's a floor to the Tzuras HaPesach, the train tracks itself is the floor of the Tzuras HaPesach. So the Pesach doesn't continue underneath that. When you have two poles, even if it dips in the middle, we'll say, but you're in the Pesach, you're within that Pesach. So even when it's further down, you're not necessarily between the poles, you're underneath the poles, but you're within that Pesach, and that would be okay. But when you have a floor to the Tzuras HaPesach, so then that ends the Pesach, and anything beneath that floor is not part of the Pesach, and that's why we had to fix it by making a separate Tzuras HaPesach for the underpass. It could be a bridge that's going over the Eruv is different than a bridge under the Eruv. That's possible. Okay, but we're talking about going underneath. Here we're discussing going underneath the Tzuras HaPesach, and Tzuras HaPesach already stopped. So then we would have to have a separate Tzuras HaPesach for that area. No, because River Road, it's not on. It's already out of the Eruv. Tzuras HaPesach doesn't. River Road, the River Road side, that underpass over there is not part of the Eruv. The Eruv is only on the right side of River Road, not on the left side. Yeah, so here someone asked before about the angle, if they're two different heights. The pole's two different heights. So here we have this wire over here crossing. This is on Eastern Avenue in New Brunswick and Landing Lane. Here's our lechi, and here's the wire crossing the street. It does angle down. We have in a few places that the wire angles down. That's okay as long as it can be considered a kaira up to 45 degrees. Once it's 45 degrees, it starts having an identity crisis. Is that a kaira or a lechi? It's no longer considered a kaira, so we'll allow anything up to 45 degree angle to be considered the kaira al gabav. Now we have a new a concept called good asik, that the mechitza, the lechi does not have to go all the way up. We just have to have 10 tfachim on the bottom to be considered a mechitza, and then we can imagine it going up, connecting to the kaira al gabav. And we use this very often as a quick repair. If the lechi high up is down, then we'll just stick a board that's 10 tefachim high. Going up 10 tefachim is up to 40 inches, 38.6 inches, and we'll stick a board underneath it, and we'll have a good asik to be our Tzuras HaPesach. So this will be our lechi. Imagine it going up to the wire, and we have that Tzuras HaPesach. The brick wall in the overpass, because it's too long to be a Tzuras HaPesach. It's too long. You can't use a lechi that's more than 4 amos. A lechi, you can't use something long as a lechi. as we will see shortly. I'll discuss something in a minute. Over here, this is again a Raritan Avenue. We have to connect. We saw that the light pole, right, this traffic light is the lechi crossing the street. Here's that wire crossing over. How does it then connect to this wall? So they used this electric box as a lechi. This electric box, there's a wire that's tied above the electric box, and this electric box is a good asik from the electric box to the wire on top of it, and that's our lechi connecting to the wall. This is in
Historically,
a
can I add?
I'm
Rabbi
sorry?
Sauer?
Yes.
Historically, when we first applied for permission to, third-party attachment, we could not use molding all the way up to communication level. We had to use, like you saw before, a board, or we used these moldings, but we put them under the wire. Then there was a question, if it's under the wire, we initially put it up with a surveyor's transit so that it was exactly under the wire.
Right.
But
It's
then
hard,
we
it's
found
very
out
hard to
that-
turn. So when we have a
you
wide
can't
board,
tell.
it's easy.
But
That's
if
for
you
the
have to go
temporary
that
fix.
far-
Use a wide board and you can hit the wire.
That's
if it's
right.
something in error, it's much harder, and especially when the poles curve. It's
That's
very
right.
hard. The poles are
So
not
now we
always
use the
straight.
concept, whoops,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
did I lose you? Oh, we use the concept of Niraleinayim. That
Right.
as long as it looks
To
under.
determine whether it's under, you can use Ner Lanai.
That was
Correct.
Rabbi Pelkowitz, I think, in Far Rockaway. But,
Okay, so here we have,
yeah, but
there's
one
a
second,
wire
let me just
over
finish
here.
one sentence. But
I'm sorry.
then when the Eruvim started to become very popular in especially in New Jersey, besides us, Teaneck and Cherry Hill, the utility gave a sock that we can take the molding all the way up to the wire. So that's when all these things changed, and we had not just 40-inch poles, but they went all the way up to communication level.
right. Yeah, and it's definitely much better. It's much easier to determine the kashrus of the Eruv when it goes all the way up. It's very easy to see. So here we have a wire that's connecting to this row of houses. And the question is, you got to get a lechi on the other side. So it goes over this fence, this white fence over here. And we want to use that fence as the lechi. The problem is we just mentioned a minute ago that you can't use a long wall or a fence as a lechi. It's not nicker as a tzuras HaPesach. So what they did is when they constructed it, if you notice over here, you put a double layer of fence, just an extra layer that is zip tied, identical to the rest of the fence. And just over here, right here, from here to here. And that serves as the lechi that's under the wire. No, it's, I don't know, Mexicans. No, and the truth is, this fence has come down numerous times, and I fixed the fence. So they get free fence fixing.
Where is this?
This is in New Brunswick. The homeowner, but it's right. It's like low-income housing over there, so no one knows what's going on. The fence could stay down forever. So I put it up whenever it came down. A few times it came down and I put it up. I had to put new poles in. It's a Hamish job, but yeah, it does the trick for the Eruv at least.
The wire is obviously much higher.
The wire is a regular communication wire that we're using just the existing wire, and they put this piece of fence, they put below it to be a good asik to connect, and that's the other half of the tzuras HaPesach. This is along the train tracks. So to come off the train tracks, as Dr. Rifkin said before, we can't do anything. We can't put anything on these poles. So they ran a wire off of this pole to come off and connect to our Eruv, to our poles. But we need it to be on top. Now the rule of tzuras HaPesach, you can't have tzuras HaPesach min atzad, so you can't just run a wire off the side of a pole. It has to be above the pole, and that we couldn't do. Obviously, it was too high over there. So what they did is they poured a concrete block at the base of this pole, and this concrete block is serving as the lechi to go under that wire. We'll use a good asik from that block, and that wire is above this concrete block, and we have good asik, and this is the tzuras HaPesach.
We have permission to put those concrete blocks.
It's not.
up.
I measured it. So wait 1 second. I'll show you in a minute something. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, you have.
Yeah, we had permission to put those concrete blocks up from the
Right. Yeah.
train company, from Amtrak.
Right.
Is there a muffler? Is it screwed into the pole?
Screwed into the pole. Yeah, screwing into the pole is machlokes. It's tochuv. Chaim Soloveitchik actually was matter that. but we're not making like that. We require that it goes over the top. We will not be simcha. Maybe big shas at chak, we would allow it to be screwed directly in. But we're never simcha on that. Not in our area at least. Okay, this is on the other side of the train tracks. Here's that concrete block that was poured. Now it seems like over time they poured these rocks, and these rocks sort of shortened the height. I'll show you here. Here you see the top of that concrete block was only at 35, 36 inches, which would be 10 tvachim according to Rabbi Avram Chaim Noah, but we're never makel to be simach on him. We usually require up to 40 inches, 38.6 or 40 inches. So what we did was we put another slab on top, another concrete piece on top over here to make that height. But then eventually made a more permanent solution and just nailed the board in next to it. And now that board is 40 tvachim high, and the wire goes above that board. We have grasik from that board up to that wire. Now this is the Route 18 crossing into New Brunswick. This is at the New Street Bridge. So we have to, if we're connecting to New Brunswick, and we're going to have to get across Route 18. So how do we do that? So originally what they did is they put up a pole over here. There's a pole here with a wire crossing all the way across to a light pole over here, going on top of the light pole. You see that light pole there? So we have a wire crossing it. Now, there was an issue with that because that light pole is on top of a wall. And the pole only starts up here. And the problem is then the Tzuras HaPesach only starts at that point. Then the area beneath it is not considered inside the Tzuras HaPesach. That is considered to be Gedi and Boikim Boy. That is, something can go under it. It's Mechitza Tluya, basically, that Mechitza, the Tzuras HaPesach is only starting here. If it would be further back, like we discussed earlier, if it would have 4 tvachim of space past the Tzuras HaPesach on that height, then that would allow that's considered a Tzuras HaPesach, and even if it dips down, it's already inside the Pesach. But if it's at the edge, then we say the Tzuras HaPesach only starts at that height, and beneath it is not in the Tzuras HaPesach, so we can't use it. One can argue maybe this is an extension of that. This little piece that's sticking out would be an extension of that. So, and maybe that would be part of the Lechi itself. And the Lechi would start further down. So maybe that it would be okay, but Rabbi Drucker did not want to be Saimach on that. So what they did is, instead of using this pole that was already put up, what they decided to do is use moldings along the wall that's placed directly underneath the beam of the bridge. So we have a molding over here going underneath the bridge, and we're going to use the beam of the bridge to be the kaira. And in the center divider, since there's a wall blocking, it's splitting it up. We need something in the middle. And so there they put a metal strip. There's a metal strip. The lechi could be any thickness. So they just put a metal strip on the wall, and that metal strip goes beneath that beam, and that's the lechi for the Tzuras HaPesach.
Is Route 18 considered a Reshus HaRabim?
Route 18, we're being saimich on not having Shishim Riboy, obviously. So it's not Reshus HaRabim. It's definitely nothing close to Shishim Riboy, people going there. So that's why it's not a Reshus HaRabim. Now, it happened after a snowstorm a couple of years ago. A snowplow seemed to have ripped it off the wall. There you have that was ripped off, and we needed to fix it. Now it's hard to make a fix in the middle of Route 18. So the quick fix was we put a board underneath that pole, that light pole. We still had that string up, and still is up, and we had a board underneath that light pole, and had it tied around the pole. And that was then, since the board starts on the ground, that was able to be the other half of the Tzuras HaPesach. But it didn't last very long. That board's no longer there, even though we drilled it into the wall, but it got ripped off. So Rabbi Drucker came up with an idea to use the pavement markers. That we have this paint on the pavement, right? So what you do is you blow torch it into the pavement. It comes as a roll, and you blow torch it, and it sort of melts into the pavement. So he thought we should do that. It'll melt into that concrete wall. that, and it's not going anywhere. The pavement markers don't come off. It's just there. It becomes emerges the wall, and that's okay to be a lechi as well. Lechi can be any thickness, any material, and therefore he felt that would be a good idea. So Dr. Rifkin made the arrangements to get the Route 18 closed off with the police, and we had the Eruv Prophet Rabbi Shatkin with his truck coming to blowtorch it on, and the problem was that the way this works is it melts asphalt as well. That's the only way it melts into it, is it melts the asphalt. It doesn't work on concrete. And therefore, it kept them falling off. It wouldn't go in. It doesn't melt into the concrete wall. Paint has to have a little, you could really paint it. Yeah, if you have a little bit of substance. But paint's also going to come off. Over time, paint's going to come off. Maybe do a few layers, but it's not going to, you have to know if it's going to last elements. So anyways, we went back and he put the metal strip, he glued it on, and we haven't had problems since. So we're still using that metal strip.
Let me just make one point over here.
Yes.
That you noticed that there was a police car there. The New Brunswick, Highland Park, and Edison police departments have been extremely cooperative in helping us. Here we needed a car actually on Route 18, and was Lieutenant, I forgot his name now, I forgot his name, whoever, was in charge of traffic. And as soon as you call him, he would assign a car there, and they did it with pleasure. The chief of police in Edison is very cooperative, Tom Bryan, and the head of traffic is within Lieutenant Dudash. We need something along Plainfield Avenue. If you have to make repairs, you obviously can't just do that in the middle of the street. You need police protection, and they've come without any problem. And the same thing with Highland Park. So
okay, let's continue. We got a lot left. Okay, here, this pole, you see the wire is not up against the pole, right? They recently started doing this. They don't attach the wires near the pole. They put it far away from the pole. So we'd have to bend it out in order to reach underneath that wire. When we discovered this, the new pole had arrived, and we didn't have time on this Friday to put this pole up. Shalom Moore tried, he couldn't do it. We needed an Eruv professional to do it. So we had an issue what to do. We can't put a regular board underneath either, because that was too far away. It's around 8-9 inches away, and it's too hard to get the board out that far. And we tried putting a fence up, and the neighbors ripped down the fence. So what we did is we used a traffic cone and put a little caution. So we had to chain it up, because it's going to rip it away. So this traffic cone we actually we grabbed off of. It was just sitting on the side of the road of Route 1. That's by Route 1. This is a Fox Road right by Route 1. But we have invested in our own. This is our own traffic cone that we've used on occasions. This goes much further out. This and we can get it out like around any wire that's 2 feet away from the pole. We're able to just chain this thing to the pole and keep it there as a temporary solution. And we'll use good asik from the traffic cone. Now sometimes
we Sauer Moore, who does a lot of our repair there. The gentleman next to Rabbi
that was Sauer Moore, yes.
Sauer Moore, yeah. He's our Eruv monkey.
This is in New Brunswick. All over we're using walls in addition. So far we're using Tzuras HaPesach, sometimes using Gurasik, sometimes not. Sometimes we use solid walls. Here, the Tzuras HaPesach connects to the train tracks. And we use that partially as a wall. Here we use this, as we saw before, we use the row of houses. This row of houses up the block, the houses themselves are the mechitza. We use that to be part of the Eruv. What? They're connected houses. It's not. It's the house. It's a road of houses without any. It's no driveways. No, they're all connected. Yeah. Here we recently we switched. This is on Donaldson Street, by Crowell's Lane, and they recently put in a solar park over there. So we had poles going up the block, around 6-7 poles, but now that they put the solar park in, and they fenced it in, we're able to connect to their fence, and we use that fence now. It saves us the issues we have with the poles. These poles we're having some issues with, and we needed temporary lechis there. and we're able to just use the fence. So here we have a Tzuras Pesach connecting to the fence. From this pole, we have a Tzuras Pesach connecting right to that fence, and we use that fence, we can use that wall. Now, there's something called a Tela Mislakit. Tela Mislakit is a mound or a hill that rises in height 4 amis over the space, rises in height 10 tfachim over the distance of 4 amis, which is an angle of 24, most places will say it's an angle of 24.6 degrees. So it rises at an angle of 24.6 degrees. It's considered, on top of it, it's considered Rosh Hashanah. So it doesn't have to be a straight wall. It could be an angled wall, and it's also considered to be a Rosh Hashanah. Now, we do use the Tela Mislakit in some parts, in some parts are mechitza as well. We'll use the terrain. If it's a steep terrain, we'll use it. This is in the Brunswick. We use it behind Adelaide. There's a steep cliff. On that side, on the west side of Highland Park, we use the cliff to be part of the Eruv. Now, there are certain areas that's not so steep, it loses its steepness. So then, if it's less than 10 tfachim, 10 amas, we'll have aymin ruba al aparetz. We'll use aymin ruba, so that gap we can ignore. But if the gap is larger than 10 amas, then we have to close up that gap. We'll put it Tzuras Pesach over there. So here we have, this is the Tela Mislakit. Over here it's not steep enough, so we put it Tzuras Pesach, and that'll close the gap. So this is in the Brunswick, behind someone's backyard, and they're nice enough to let us put the pole there to close the gap. Here as well, we use the Tela Mislakit, and again, New Brunswick on George Street. This along the Raritan River, we use the slope along the line of along Raritan River. There's a certain point we switch on to poles. Here's the pole with the lechi. In order to connect the Tela Mislakit to the pole, we put a board. There's a board connecting it, so you have the Tela Mislakit. The board goes to the edge of the Tela Mislakit, and then it could jump onto the pole. No, the guardrail is not hard enough, and there's a gap on the bottom. There's a place in New Brunswick that we use the Tela Mislakit as well, and there was a break in it, and we had to connect to this tree over here. We had to connect to there's a fence over here, so I just piled up. Someone had poured dirt, and it wasn't steep enough at that point. So when that happened, I just built a log fence, a bunch of branches. And this fence over here is connecting the Tela Mislakit to the fence along the edge, and that closed up the gap. So we could use any type of materials, any type of structures to close these gaps. This again is that fence at the solar park that we're using, and we're using over here a concept. Now this is not a solid wall; it's aimid. It's really aimid. It's parts merubal aimid. The spaces are really larger than the poles, than the aymin. So we're using a concept of lovud, that since the poles are within 3 tvachim, approximately 9-10 inches of each other, they are considered to be solid, and that we have our solid wall over here. Right. There is a concept of mechitza re'ua. Mechitza shel shesi oishel eruv is re'ua. You cannot use it to enclose the entire eruv. And a large area cannot be enclosed with such a type of mechitza. To use it as just as part of the mechitza, then it's that can be used. You just can't enclose the whole area. Just as small parts, you're allowed to use mechitza ruah using love. Yeah, mechitza ruah is because it's just a one-directional mechitza. It's just using mechitza going up. It doesn't have the side. The side's filling in the gaps with the lovud. So it's called mechitza shel shesi. You can't use it to enclose the entire area. You can use it for smaller spaces. Here that. We can connect the fence to this pole with lovud. This is less than 9 inches, so we can use this fence as a wall for that area, and then it can jump with the lovud. It can jump to this pole, and here's our lechi on this pole, continuing the Eruv. Oh, a little bit of empty space. Yeah, that's not a problem. A little bit of space. If it's less than 3 tvachim, we don't care if there's a little bit of space there. Here, this is in New Brunswick. We had an issue. They put a new pole, and if you notice, there's a lechi going up on this pole, but the wire that we need crossing the street is on this pole. Okay, so we have this, and this wire does not continue to this pole. So we had to jump from this pole to this pole. The problem is when you measure the distance between these two poles, it was slightly more than 3 tvachim. At least the poles are a little bit crooked. So higher up it was a little, down here it's less than 3 tvachim, but higher up it's separated as 1 3 tvachim. So I just screwed a board in over there, and this board had gaps, so we're able to connect the two poles with lavud, and therefore we can have one lechi on this pole and the other lechi on the other pole, and they connect. Sometimes we use lavud when they were constructing that solar park. We needed to use the fence as a mechitza. I'll explain shortly why that was. So this is our pole. In order to connect to the fence, we just use lavud strings, tarred wire across within 3 tvachim of each other, and that makes a mechitza up to 40 tvachim. And there's a mechitza using the concept of lavud. It's as if there's a solid wall over there. I'm sorry, 40 inches. I'm sorry, 40 inches, 10 tvachim. I'm sorry. And here again, just you use string to connect to a fence over there. So behind Adelaide, we're really using the telemislaket over here. We're using the steepness of this hill, but just to get the fence in as well, and use the lavud strings to use that fence. So you could tie strings, and that makes a wall with lavud. Now, sometimes you see, as we pointed out earlier as well, the poles don't go all the way down to the ground. They don't go all the way down. As long as it's within lavud, that's fine. This is within lavud. And it's considered to be connected down to the ground as long as it's within 9 inches. It's around 8 inches, and that's fine as well. It doesn't have to go all the way to the ground. Another way we can use lavud, we try not to use it, and we'll fix it when we see this, but sometimes the tree swallows up the lechis. If it's on too long, the tree will swallow up the lechi. We will fix it and put a new lechi on, but if let's say we can't, then you're able to use lavud, and since the pieces of lechi, once it's in there, there's no lechi left. But you can connect those two pieces through lavud. So lavud can be used in different ways to b'machshir the eruv. Okay, now so that's in terms of the construction. I'm now going to show you some problems that come up with the eruv over time, and that why we have to check every week, because the different issues that could occur to an eruv. Here you have, it's a very typical, probably the most common problem, lechis crack, especially towards the bottom. People they use weed whackers around the poles, and it could crack the lechi. Here probably you could still use a lavud, but it might be very loose because it's not connected. See, we have a staple over here. Once this could blow around in the wind, that would be a loose lechi. So we would want to fix that. When we check, is there enough time to do repair? Hopefully. Yeah. How long does the check take? Well, you have to ask the checkers. Everyone's checking. Some people it takes 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I personally check New Brunswick every week. It takes me around 45 minutes. 200 lechis divided by 11 people. Yeah, it's not very hard. Usually you can just drive by and see. Sometimes you have to walk. In the park, obviously, you have to walk. Here, there's a crack in the lechi. There's a crack over there that has to be fixed. Twisted, as long as it's going up, it's going up. That's what we're being simulcon. It's going up, and it's not, it has to be in a general upward direction. That's considered. We try to get as straight as possible, but sometimes it's. Can you use lavud? You probably could. You probably could use lavud for that as well. Yes. Here, this is the whole bottom half has been ripped off. So here, the bottom. This is our lechi, and the bottom is ripped off. So that for sure has to be replaced. Here's another break. This is just very typical. This is, you'll find many times. Here, the lechi fell out of something ripped it out. It wasn't broken, but it got ripped out of the nail of that staple, and that has to be put back in. Here, this place of this is on Woodbridge Avenue. It's prone to car accidents. This is right off the overpass from the one where it comes down onto Woodbridge Avenue. So maybe there's cars speeding over there and they crash into the pole. It's happened a few times already that they crashed into the pole. This happened a few weeks ago. It's actually after the checker had checked already. He had checked on Thursday morning, and he texts me on Thursday evening that he just saw there's an accident. He drove by and there's an accident over there. It might be worthwhile to check it out again. And sure enough, the car had crashed into there and knocked out our lechi. And then they just do a little fix, just replace it. Now this.
There's not a lot of time to do the repair, though.
So we have some checkers checking on Thursday. That will give us enough heads up. Some on Friday, usually Friday morning. Hopefully we have enough time. Baruch Hashem, b'li ein har, we were able to do it in the past. Now, there was a big storm a few years ago that we had a heads up. We knew there was a big storm, and it really was around probably 15 hours of labor fixing the Eruv, but we started on Thursday. The storm, I think, was on a Wednesday. I already started on Thursday. So we had enough time to take care of the Eruv.
I'm saying if you would just bring them closer.
Yeah, that's what we can do. It's not a big deal. You just have to move it over and stick it in. It's a very easy repair. I don't think you say love it like this, because it's in the wrong direction. It's not continuing upward.
But I'm saying if you would just put them next to each other, just pull it together and tie them together.
Yeah, next to each other. Oh, just touching it like that. We try not to be some. We try that it should continue straight up and not jump sideways. You want to know, could you make a lechi like that? You probably could, but we want it to be one continual thing going straight up. Okay, I'm sorry. Let me just get back to where we are. Now, this is probably my most frightening experience in the Eruv. This is a dead tree in Donaldson Park, and the lechi came down. If you notice right over here, here's the lechi. Right here. This is a lechi that came off the tree. So I couldn't get anyone to repair it. I had to do it myself. This is the maximum height I would go up. But the problem is a dead rotten tree. So when I climbed up the tree, and I had to bang in the lechi. Every bang, you could feel the shaking that this tree's not going to last very long. And so I got it up for Shabbos. So sure enough, the next week, here's the tree. The tree was on the ground. So we've since rerouted the Eruv. Yeah. We obviously we had to reroute the Eruv. Now I already had to reroute it before then. I knew that tree's not going to last. During the week I had Rabbi Shotkin come down to put up new poles, but by Friday it was already down. This is on Landings Lane. This is a typical. Also, what happens? You have a car accident. Something crashed into the thing, broke our pole. So what we had to do is temporarily just replace that pole. That's this utility pole is not going to last very long, obviously, but to put that, I had to saw off a little bit from the bottom and replace it. Then the pole disappeared 1 week. No more pole. So temporarily put a board underneath the wire. Okay, and then when if I get someone to fix it, this is on a Friday morning. If I get someone to do it, then that week, let them do it. That's good. If not, just use the board for that Shabbos, and then eventually we put a new pole, a new lechi on that pole. So that happens often. This is Ari Godfrey, one of our checkers. Here's a tree that came down with the lechi in the middle of the woods. This is one of my first experiences with the Eruv, and we had to reroute the Eruv. We had to reroute the Eruv then to a new tree. Now, that's with poles breaking, poles coming down. Sometimes the poles are still there. Like right here, you have a pole still there. But the wire comes down because the tree comes down on top of the wire, takes down the wire. Is the big tree taking the wire? We're going to have to replace that. This happened around 2 months ago. There were big storms in Donaldson Park. A huge tree came down on top of our wire. It took Rabbi Shotkin a few hours he had to chainsaw the tree. It was blocking, the tree is so big, it was blocking the path of the wire. He couldn't restring the wire. And so he had to chainsaw that tree and in order to make a path for the wire to restring the wire. This happened actually last week, this past Friday. This wire came down. It's on Fox Road going into the woods by Donaldson. Right here, the wire came down. See this wire over here? This came down. It's supposed to go straight across like this, and it came down. It got stuck in the trees. It got ripped out. This is the other side. This is the side where it's attached to the tree in the woods, and it got ripped out. It just simply got ripped out. A tree fell down on it and ripped the wire, so we had to replace that wire. Now, sometimes, and this is I alluded to earlier, this is an issue in the park where we have lots of lechis with the wires are nailed into the tree, as opposed to being connected to the lechi. The tree over time grows or moves in a different direction, and it sort of pulls the wire away from the top of the lechi. The wire has to be above the lechi. So this is it's like I get all the time. Actually, right now, yesterday, I got texted by an Eruv checker the same type of question, too close to call, whether the wire is going above the lechi. I'm going to have to go check it out today. So this looks like might just make it that it's above the lechi, but sometimes it really moves away, and we have to fix it. We have to adjust either the wire or the lechi. This one moved away. The wire is no longer above the top of the lechi, so we have to move that lechi. If it looks like it, yeah, but you have to really look like it. Yeah, but that's the question. That would be like for good asik. But the question is, if it's going up to the top and it's right there, and depending on which angle you look, so we want to fix that. We really want to have that fixed it's worth it to climb up the tree and just try to move it, adjust the lechi to be under the wire. Here we have that the tree, like it bent in a certain direction, so it popped out the lechis from under the wire. Yeah, so you had to like push the lechis back to the wire. Here, this is on the bridge crossing into New Brunswick. We have a wire coming out of the wall of the bridge. It was attached with these wood boards. These wood boards are screwed into the wall, but the wood board cracked, so the wire got pulled away from the top of the lechi. So I made a temporary fix. I just put a little screw in there. It didn't last very long. It came down again because it's ripping the wood. The wood's cracking. So I had a few weeks ago, I had Rabbi come down, and he drilled a hook, an eye into the wall, and now we have a solid attachment into the wall that the wire is now permanently above the lechi, hopefully permanently. This is another issue that sometimes, as we discussed earlier, sometimes the wire doesn't go up against the pole. It's far away from the pole. So here we have the wire that's away from the pole, and so the pole, the lechi, had to be connected to the wire. It was zip tied to the wire. Zip tie broke, so it's no longer under the wire. So here's the wire, here's the pole. Top of the pole is not under the wire. It was very difficult to get something. The boards couldn't go far enough, and I couldn't put our construction piece over there because it's at the edge of a street. There's an alleyway right over here, so I couldn't put our traffic cone over there. So I piled up a few boards to just get it to the edge of the wire until we were able to fix it. And then we got it fixed. Put a new zip tie underneath, and it's right there up underneath the wire. Here's another situation of the pole moving out from here. The pole is under the wire, but somehow it slipped. Here it slipped up, and it's no longer underneath the wire. It slipped up above the wire, and that had to be fixed as well. Because it has to be under the wire, not to the side of the wire. We discussed earlier the ridge lines, the lightning wires on top of the poles. Now you can use, that's a very simple series of pesach that goes over the top. But sometimes they start curving a little bit, and they no longer go over the top. A lot of times it's hard to make the call, but sometimes it's pretty obvious. Like over here, you see this is that wire. Okay, right there's the wire, and it's no longer over the edge of the pole. So we have to put lechis. We have lechis on this pole. And the poles and the adjacent poles as well. If there's one pole that's missing and you put lechis on the bottom, so you have to make two new tzuris ha-pesachs to connect the adjacent poles. On either side, we have to put lechis on the poles to make tzuris ha-pesach to connect. It goes over the other pole, but over here, what happens is we put a lechi on a lower wire. So now the tzuris ha-pesach is on the lower wire. So the only way to make a tzuris ha-pesach to connect to the other poles is to put lechis on the lower wires of the adjacent poles as well.
Rabbi Sauer, in this case here.
Yes. Sorry.
In that case, there's something that's holding up that wire,
right?
And it's mostly.
So according to Moshe, we'd be able to use that, and that connects because we'll say it continues up further. We don't like to be saimach on that.
How is that different from having one of your curving conduits?
Because it's sort of like a different. It's not really this pole. It seems like a different piece. So even though it's something else, but it's not a natural continuation of that pole.
Okay.
Right? That if you have one pole that's going up, it's the same pole. Over here, it's a different piece. Moshe okays it, and we can be samech on it if need be. But we'd rather not. If we don't have to be samech on that kula, we'd rather to take care of it and putting a lechi on the bottom. Now, here's an interesting problem happened. So we have this is in New Brunswick on Tabernacle, right off the Route 18. We have a Tzursa Pesach here, one pole here, one lechi here, one lechi here. And the problem is they switch the wire. So this is under the lower wire, but then the wire then doesn't stay low. Generally, the lower wire will always stay as the lower wire. For some reason over here, they switch the wire. And it goes, and the lower wire switches to go to be the top wire. So it happened one day, just 1 week, it happened like that. So what we had to do, we had to extend that Tzursa Pesach, that lechi had to be extended to go to the top wire as opposed to the bottom wire. Another issue we have is when trees fall onto the wires without taking down the wire, but it pushes the wire out of line. So this is at the train station, the parking lot of the train station. Here we have, this is the wire coming off the top of the pole. And you can see right over here, the tree is leaning into that wire. See right there. It's pushing the wire. Here's a close-up. Okay, this is the tree on the wire. This is the wire, and this is the tree leaning on the wire. If it's less than 3 tvachim, it could be it's okay. We try to fix it anyways. That it shouldn't be pushed at all out of line. And for this, we actually did a midnight fix. He came down at 12 o'clock midnight. Rabbi Shotkin came down, and he chainsawed that tree to take it off the wire.
Does it matter which way the three buttons are not there?
Does it matter?
Which way can you push out?
Pushed out to the side. Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's up or down.
Down, we're not makbid. We're not makbid if the wire is pushed down. We're not makbid on that. There's the Mishkas Yaakov who has a chomer, but over here it's impossible with phone lines. It's really impossible to use when we're using the communication lines. It's impossible to prevent it from going down more than 3 tvachim. But pushed out of the side, we're gonna be makbid because it's not in line of the lechis anymore.
How often do you need these kind of services?
How often do we need these services? I'd say once. It depends on the seasons. Probably on average once a month. Once a month, maybe once in 2 months. The last time I had Rabbi Shotkin here was a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. Here we have this is PSE&G's tree people. That the tree fell on this wire. That's actually their wire. That's it's using. We have a wire over here. This is at the again. This is mamish the adjacent Tzursa Pesach to that last one in the parking lot. And the tree fell. It didn't take down the wire, but it fell on the wire, and we had to get them to cut the tree so the wire will be straight. Otherwise, the tree totally pushing that wire out of the line. And this happened last Friday as well. There's a tree. This is a small branch, so it pushed. See, it's on that wire. Here's the wire, and it's pushing that wire out of line. This is very easy. You just had to take the branch off, and the wire popped back into line. Okay, sometimes we have an issue when we use the communication lines. Well, there are service lines going from those wires that we're using, the service lines going to the houses, and they might pull the wire away from that line. So we have lechis on the poles, but the service lines are pulling the wire out of line. So then we have to move the service lines. And that's what Rabbi Shotkin will do. He'll come down and go up in a truck and switch this service line from this wire to the other wire so it doesn't pull our wire that we're using out of line.
Disconnecting the house from the...
No, it doesn't. No, it's just clipped onto this. He's able to, I don't know, somehow he's able to clip it onto another line. That's what he did. He came down and he just moved it to a different line. The same way it got there in the first place, it was never there. And someone moved it, so he just moved it back to the original place. Now there's the Sivus in Makar Chaim says that you can't have a Tzursa Pesach enclosed in mechitzas. You can't. The lechi of Tzursa Pesach cannot be inside walls, inside of Rosh Hashanah, walls of Rosh Hashanah. So here we have this is our lechi on River Road, and they were doing some kind of construction there, and they put a construction fence around the pole. So now our lechi is enclosed in this rishus hayachid. So it sort of like chops it off, it fills it in, and we say you have to ignore that it gets filled up. So we can't use that. This lechi over here can't be used as part of the Tzuras HaPesach because it's enclosed in rishus hayachid. So the quick fix was put a piece of tape. Put a piece of electrical tape on the outside of the fence and continued it up, and the tape then served as the lechi for that week. Here too, and when they were constructing the solar park over there on Donaldson Street, these were our, until that fence came up, until the fence around the park came up, we were using these poles. And the problem is the poles aren't closed in Rishus HaYachid because they're inside the construction fence. So we couldn't use them. What we had to do is use the fence itself. I showed you earlier the loved wires connecting to that fence on one side. And here on the other side, we put a large board underneath the wires where it just came right over the fence. And this is the lechi connecting further. It caught the wire with a gurasik to continue it because we couldn't use these poles since they were enclosed in the Rishus HaYachid. According to Kor Chaim, that's a problem. Now, sometimes,
Do you always eyeball how under the wire? That's not an easy thing to do.
well, yeah, to determine, it was very hard to determine. That's why I used the wide board. You could basically try to figure it out. The wider the board, the easier it is to figure it out. Usually it's not an issue to determine because the poles, the lechis go all the way up to the wire. So it's very easy to check. You see it's directly under the wire. It's only when we have these gurasiks that's a little bit hard. Now, sometimes we have difficulties checking the park. This is from a few weeks ago. The park gets flooded. If it wasn't checked before this happens, we cannot use the park because it's underwater. It's inaccessible to go check, and then the park will be off limits. We would say that the park is down, or not down. It's not checkable, and we can't use that part of the Eruv. And this happens often that the park gets flooded. Here we have that this is also right after a very rainy season. The park was very muddy, and the wire came down. This is on the east side of the park. We had a very difficult wire came down. We had to call in the electric company to do it, ADK electric company, but it was so muddy that he got stuck in the mud. And that's why he tried putting boards on the tires. It didn't work. And he had to be towed out. He called they had this van chained up to the van, and the van had to tow him out of the mud. Okay, that's basically it in terms of the construction and the maintenance of the Eruv. Now we know that the different aspect of Eruv is Eruv Chatzeris. When you have different when you have different private houses and opening into a more public area, you have to have Eruv Chatzeris, and that we have. This is located in Havas Achim. There's 2 boxes of matzahs over there, serving as the Eruv Chatzeris. For Pesach, I actually, for the Machmirim, we don't want to use strites matzahs on Pesach. So you want everyone to be mishtatet in Eruv. If someone's not part of the Eruv, it's going to mess up the Eruv. So I have a box of madatz matzahs, boxes of madatz matzahs that we can use as a backup to this Eruv. No, it's not displayed. But it's in my house if you want to know. I'm sorry? The Eruv Chatzeris you just do amongst yourself. All you do is you take these matzahs and you say everyone's shared. You mizak it to everyone, that it belongs to everyone in town. And everyone is going to ever come into town because anyone who comes for Shabbos, if they move in, then they have to be part of the Eruv as well. So you have to mizak it for any person who's going to be in this town for Shabbos, being here for Shabbos. Goyim is next. This is just for the Jews in town. Now, whenever you make an Eruv, you have to make, if there's non-Jews living in that area, you have to make a schiris rishus from those non-Jews. Now, you're not going to go knock on everyone's doors to make a schiris rishus. So you have to, we rent from a government body who has rights in everyone's properties. And for our Eruv, there had to be 4 schirisin because there's actually 3 municipalities. It's Edison, Highland Park, and New Brunswick. This is from Highland Park. This is the schiris that they made from Highland Park. From the mayor of Highland Park, this is from the mayor of Edison. the schiris, the one in the Brunswick, was burnt in the Portland Tzedek fire. And schiris is still valid. We have to get a new one, but we don't really have documentation of it. And
They're working
the
on
last
that.
one, yes.
Yeah, I'll get it, just, with
Oh,
this-
okay, fine. Yeah, I'm sure you will. And the last one was from the Rutgers police. The Rutgers is not under the jurisdiction of New Brunswick. They have their own jurisdiction, it's state jurisdiction, and they made a schiris from the Rutgers police.
Without this, there'd be no community area.
Without this, you cannot have an Eruv because you have to rent from the Goyim. You can't. The Eruv Chatzeris does not work without a schiris reshus from the non-Jews. I think it's something about. Well, the one in Highland Park says about $99. I don't see over here.
We gave him a
Yeah,
dollar,
99 years. Yeah, it says
99 years for $1.
Yeah,
When the
99
mayor
years for
changes,
$1.
when the
So-
mayor changes, you need to get a new proclamation?
Why? The mayor changed? No. Once he had reshus to do it at that time, he has a right to do it. You don't have to change over. Okay, and that is basically it. So want to end off the Gemara in Eruvin, Daf Chof Aleph on Beis says Shlomo was Masakin Eruvin and the Tilas Yadayim. So there's a word that they say there are two types of things. There's the Tilas Yadayim, two situations. The Tilas Yadayim literally means the removal of hands. It means stay away. Sometimes you're supposed to stay away from situations. Eruvin is sometimes it means to get involved. I just want to make an appeal. If anyone knows anyone who would like to participate in somehow either checking the Eruv as a backup checker or maybe to take over some parts of the Eruv or to do some kind of fixing. Repairs, not always the Shalom are available to fix, and it's too close to Shabbos to have someone come down here from out of town. If anyone wants to get involved, we're more than happy to accommodate.
Also,
Thank you very much.
hello,
Thank
before we
you.
disband, hello? I'd
Yes.
just like to give a big yashikach to Rabbi Sauer. He watches this like a hawk every week. He's constantly involved. And as you notice, there's always little things that come up. And a big yashikach to the Eruv checkers, because every week, rain or snow, they're out there and they monitor and they let us know. And so they get a big yashikach to Rabbi Drucker, he's around town all the time, most of the time, so we can address our questions to him. And he's always ready to come out and to inspect something and to be, to guide us with that. So, but again, yashikach to all, and especially again, yashikach to Rabbi Sauer and the checkers. And Rabbi Sauer really monitors this on a very regular, conscientious basis. And you see the work that goes into this. It's a dynamic situation. So yashikach.
All right, and thank you, Rabbi
Yashikar.
Dr. Rifkin, for all your work. It would
And
not
now
be
you
possible
know-
without you.
And now you know where the money that you contribute every year for the Eruv, where that money goes to.
All right. Thank you.
Shakach, very clear,
Okay,
very
thank you very
beautiful
much. Thank you.
presentation.
Yes, Mikoyah.